begin by introducing Gary Berntsen.
Gary.
My name is Gary Berntsen. I'm running for the United States Senate against Chuck Schumer. This evening I have some fixed statements. Usually I do this freehand, but this is so important for us to be so accurate. Israel must continue to be one of the United States' most important strategic allies on the globe. They are the key to a more advanced and successful Middle East policy. The Obama administration's recent wavering of support is an unacceptable affront to this critical friendship that puts both Americans and Israelis at great peril from the threats of Islamic fundamentalism. Senator Chuck Schumer has simply failed to use the necessary political muscle required to reverse this trend. As the Central Intelligence Agency's former chief of Hezbollah operations, I fought to dismantle one of the most organized and dangerous threats to Israel and Middle East peace on a daily basis. After the attacks of 9/11, I was called upon to act as the commander of CIA's paramilitary forces in the invasion of Afghanistan, as well as being the architect of the Battle of Tora Bora against al-Qaeda forces. These experiences bolstered my recognition of the dangerous threats facing both our nations and the strength of Israel as America's key ally in the Middle East. Unlike many of the so-called leaders in Washington, including my opponent, Chuck Schumer, I will stand up and publicly declare my unequivocal support for Israel and will influence our nation's policies to reflect that position rather than the middle-of-the-road approach that has gained so much support in the back rooms of Washington and Capitol Hill. We cannot, we must not, and I will not abandon Israel. The negative global response to recent events, such as Israel's 2008-2009 military offensive against key military targets after the expiration of Hamas's period of calm, identified as Operation Castellet, and the flotilla incident highlighted the anti-Israeli sentiment that is gaining in the popularity in the world, and most notably in the United Nations. The UN Human Rights Commission alone has criticized Israel on 27 separate occasions in resolutions that grant effective impunity to dangerous terrorist groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and their state sponsors, including Syria and Iran. The world's growing anti-Israeli sentiment is as blatant as ever. The inception of the infamous Goldstone report is a clear-cut example of this. As Dr. Danielle Gordis, Senior Vice President of the Shalom Center, said, the Goldstone report is a way of using international law as a means of saying the Jewish state should not have a right to defend itself. I fully believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, and that this is a truth that should be paramount when discussing and establishing our nation's foreign policy. I insist that the United States separate itself from the increasingly biased international opinion and stand firmly beside Israel so that there is no lingering doubt about our commitment to her. Rest assured, I will never play politics in an attempt to push Israel into any situation that compromises her security. The United States must also continue to enthusiastically deliver foreign aid to Israel. While most recipients of U.S. aid fail to provide a return on the investment, aid to Israel not only helps protect an important strategic ally, it also helps protect America and our troops abroad. I believe, talk about Iran now, I believe that the existence of a nuclear Iran is the greatest present-day threat to the stability and peace of the Middle East, and especially to Israel. Accordingly, I believe that it is imperative that the United States stand firmly and resolute opposition to Iran and its nuclear ambitions. To date, international sanctions have not realized success, nor have they been taken seriously by Iran. For instance, Resolution 1747 of 2007 gave economic incentives to stop enriching uranium, Resolution 1803 and 208 demanded that Iran stop enriching uranium. However, Iran has not been penalized because it claims it's enriching uranium for peaceful purposes, thus rendering the resolutions moot. Is there a better word than pointless for what the UN is doing? To be fair, the UN is making some incremental progress as demonstrated by the more robust resolution 1929 on June 9, 2010. While this resolution has more crippling and serious sanctions, Iran still refuses to cooperate and continues to build their nuclear program. Ahmadinejad himself called the 2010 sanctions a used handkerchief fit for the dustbin. Here at home, passage of the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Accountability and Disinvestment Act, which is called CISADA, provided more teeth to the already in place UN sanctions. In fact, according to the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, APAC, the results of CISADA have been positive and significant to include France has announced it would no longer provide petroleum to Iran, and Lloyd's of London announced it would restrict insurance to vessels shipping petroleum to Iran. This is good. Our European friends are finally helping us a bit. I believe that in order to ensure a nuclear-free Iran, the Obama administration must continue to strictly enforce CISADA, and the United States and the UN Security Council must cooperate in pursuit of even stronger and more aggressive international sanctions. Regardless of these developments, I am mindful of the seismic geopolitical shift that would occur should Iran achieve nuclear ambitions. This development casts a dangerous shadow over any hopes of a lasting peace for the region and beyond. This is why I believe that the threat must ultimately be derailed by any means necessary, and that military action must remain on the table. I believe that Israel should continue to aggressively explore peaceful solutions to the ongoing land and political dispute with its neighbors. But any such negotiations must be initiated without undue exterior pressure from the U.S. or the world community, because ultimately it must be a negotiated settlement that is in the best interest of both sides. If not, any publicized gains will once again be short-lived. With two separate Palestinian entities in Gaza and the West Bank, the already challenging proposals for peace are made even more difficult. I believe Israel should not negotiate with Hamas or any terrorist group until at a minimum they recognize Israel's right to exist. I am committed to ensuring the current policy of the United States that holds aid to Hamas people. I am committed to ensuring that the current policy of the United States that holds all aid to Hamas be halted until they recognize Israel's right to exist. Ultimately, there should be a Jewish state and an Arab state living side by side. Perhaps when the Palestinian Authority realizes that when they denounce and fight terrorism, the Palestinian state alongside an Israeli state will become less a vision and more a reality. The final point I would like to make is a big one. The U.S. and our policy in the Middle East, we've had no policy on Iran. And the key to all of this is we must have a policy on Iran that demands regime change, not negotiation with them. Regime change. We need to support a radio-free Europe-type entity and others. We need to work to remove those walls. I'd like to take the two questions now. Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question, one of which you already answered, so...
You can only really have one-part question.
Yeah, my wife's question is a one-part question. She'd like to know why your opponent, Schumer, is deciding to help the administration throw Israel under the bus. And while I don't realize I realize you have a crystal ball, why do you think it is?
The question is, why is Senator Schumer assisting this administration in throwing Israel under the bus? The answer is simple: political expediency. That's it. Yes, sir.
Your best opinion, do the United States or Israel have the military capability to set back areas?
The question is does the U.S. and Israel have the ability to set back the Iranian military ability to set back the Iranian nuclear program? The important point to understand is this. On the military side, if you're going to do a military strike, you need to set them back about 10 years and not 2 years. That's the important point. If you're going to do this militarily, you got to set them back 10 years. That means you have to hit a lot of those facilities. Israel does have the technology for deep earth penetrating devices, as the United States has. The Israelis, we talk in the United States about drones. We have the Predator, we have the Reaper now. The Reaper's the biggest one we have. It's the size of an F-16. The Israelis recently unveiled their newest drone. It's the size of a 737. Guess what that's for? Probably a nuclear program. But anyway, I was only allowed to take 2 questions. That's it. I want to thank you all for